Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. And I have to say, looking at the news feeds this morning, it feels a little strange.
So,
Usually when we crack open these public health reports, I'm bracing myself for bad news. But today, the headline data from the National Center for Health Statistics is, well, it's arguably the best news we've had in a decade.
it really is. It's the kind of morning where you actually feel some, I don't know, some optimism.
Right. I mean, life expectancy in the U.S. has hit a record high of 79 years. We're living longer. But the real headline, the one that's popping up everywhere, is this win on the drug war front. Drug overdose deaths dropped by a record 26.2% in 2024.
Which is massive.
It's massive.
It is historic.
Yeah.
And, to put that in perspective, we aren't just talking about a statistical blip. We are talking about tens of thousands of people who are still here because of that shift.
Exactly. It feels like we finally got our act together on opioids. But
I know you.
you didn't come here just to high-five me and wrap things up.
No.
You brought a stack of reports that suggest this victory lap might be a little premature.
Yeah. I hate to be the one to pull the plug on the celebration, but you're right. While we're patting ourselves on the back for the win on opioids, there's a kind of hidden data set moving in the exact opposite direction.
And what is that?
The scary part is, it's not some new street drug. It's the stuff we're likely to use to toast the good news.
Alcohol.
Alcohol.
Okay, so that's the mission today. We're going to put the champagne on ice, literally,
Yeah.
and look at the mortality data, the demographics, and the economics of alcohol versus opioids. We've got reports from the Kaiser Family Foundation, the CDC, some public health records out of Boston.
Right.
And I guess the core question is, why is one of these a national emergency and the other is just happy hour?
Precisely. And I think the answer is going to unsettle a lot of people because the numbers.
Yeah.
The numbers are just far more shocking than the public perception suggests.
Well, let's start with that baseline, just so we know what we're comparing against. The opioid win. The data from 2024, it showed overdose rates dropping to, 23.1 per 100,000 people.
That's right. And I think Boston is a great case study because it shows intent.
What do you mean?
Well, they didn't just hope the problem would go away. They distributed over 23,000 doses of naloxone. They integrated medical care with addiction services. It's a textbook example of what happens when society points at a problem and says, this is a crisis, fix it.
Okay, so we proved we can fix a substance crisis when we actually try. So now let's flip the page. What is happening with alcohol while we're fixing opioids?
It's the inverse. While opioid deaths were finally bending downwards, alcohol-induced deaths have been quietly skyrocketing. And I'm not using that word for dramatic effect. I'm looking at an analysis from PLOS Global Public Health. From 1999 to 2024, alcohol-induced deaths increased by 89%.
89%.
Yeah.
They nearly doubled.
Nearly doubled. And if you look at the Kaiser Family Foundation data, they note a steady climb, rising 70% in just the last decade alone. So while all the cameras were pointed at fentanyl, alcohol was steadily killing more people every single year.
But hold on a second. I want to challenge this a little bit. When we say alcohol-induced death, what are we actually counting? Because with opioids, it's pretty clear-cut, right? You take too much, you stop breathing.
Right.
With alcohol, are we just talking about liver failure in someone who's been drinking for 40 years?
That is the crucial distinction, and that's exactly the right question to ask. If you use the narrow definition, things like acute alcohol poisoning or end-stage cirrhosis, the numbers are high, but maybe not crisis high in the public's mind.
Okay.
But the experts argue we need to use the broad definition.
Which includes what?
That includes deaths where alcohol was a contributing factor. So, fatal car accidents where the driver was impaired, suicides where alcohol lowered inhibitions, certain cancers. And if you look at that number, for 2022, it was 105,308 deaths.
Wow. Over 100,000 deaths in a single year.
Yes.
Okay, I need to contextualize that. How does 105,000 compare to opioids at the height of the crisis?
Well, depending on the year and how you slice the data, opioid deaths have generally hovered between, say, 79,000 and 83,000.
So wait, by this broader definition, alcohol is killing significantly more people than opioids ever did.
It is. And it's also more than double the number of suicide deaths, which is around 49,000.
That is wild. I mean, think about the task forces, the legislative hearings, the billions of dollars. We declared a federal public health emergency in 2017 for opioids.
You did.
Do we have anything remotely close to that for alcohol?
Silence. Just crickets. There is no federal emergency declaration. There's no Operation Warp Speed for alcoholism. And consider this, alcohol accounts for twice as many emergency department visits as opioids.
Twice as many.
It is the most prevalent substance use disorder in the country, aside from tobacco. Yet, purely from a policy standpoint, we treat it as business as usual.
It really forces you to confront the psychology of it.
Uh,
I mean, alcohol is legal. It's not
mm-hmm,
just legal, it's the social lubricant of our entire society.
mm-hmm.
You don't celebrate a promotion with fentanyl, but you certainly do with a bottle of expensive scotch.
That cultural veil is exactly what blinds us to the lethality.
Yeah.
Because it's legal and celebrated, we just categorize it differently in our brains. It's a beverage, not a drug.
Which brings me to the next part of your research, which I frankly found the most disturbing. It's about who is dying. Because I think most of us have a stereotype in our head.
Sure.
If you say alcoholic, I picture an older guy, maybe down on his luck, sitting at a bar at 11 a.m.
That's the old archetype, right? That's what media sold us for 50 years.
Right.
But the data tells a completely different, much more tragic story. The face of this crisis is changing, and it's changing rapidly.
Okay.
The rise in mortality is actually fastest among women.
Women, really, across all age groups.
It's specifically younger women. Between 1999 and 2024, alcohol-induced deaths among women aged 25 to 34. They rose by 255%.
255%.
Yeah.
That's an epidemic number. That's not a statistical error.
No, it's a fundamental shift in behavior and biology. For men of the same age, it rose 188%, which is still terrible, but the acceleration among young women is unprecedented.
Wow.
The KFF report pointed out that over the last decade, the relative growth in death rates was 86% for females versus 61% for males.
What is driving that? Is it the whole wine mom culture? The idea that alcohol is a form of self-care?
That's certainly part of the cultural narrative. We've normalized daily drinking for women as a coping mechanism for stress, for parenting, for work. And the biological impact is catching up.
And it's not just women, right?
No, it's young adults in general. The 26 to 44 age group saw a 144% increase in death rates over the last decade.
26 to 44. That's the prime of life.
Yeah.
That's the workforce. That's parents with young kids.
Exactly. These are the people who are supposed to be the healthiest, the most productive economic engine of the country, and instead they are dying at record rates. It's a demographic disaster waiting to happen.
And we also need to talk about the disparity in specific communities. You highlighted the data on American Indian and Alaska Native populations and the scale of those numbers. It's just heartbreaking.
It is devastating. The death rates for American Indian and Alaska Native populations are 5 times higher than white populations. 5 times.
Can you give us a concrete example of that?
Sure. Look at the data from the Dakotas. In a state like South Dakota, the rate is 133.2 per 100,000.
133. And what's the national average again?
The national average is around 13.5.
So in these communities, the death rate is literally 10 times the national average.
Yes. It is a localized catastrophe that is largely being ignored by the mainstream narrative.
And geography plays a huge role here too, right? I think a lot of people assume substance abuse is an inner city problem.
Far from it. Rural areas are seeing faster growth in these death rates than urban centers. The rates in rural areas nearly doubled in just a decade. And the pandemic, it just acted as a massive accelerant.
Right, the isolation.
Isolation, lack of access to care, economic stress, it all compounded. While urban areas might have had better access to telehealth or support networks, rural communities were often just left to fend for themselves.
So you have this perfect storm of rising usage and shrinking support.
Exactly.
So we've established that this is killing more people than we think, and it's hitting women, young people, and rural communities harder than we expect. But I want to pivot to the why, because I still struggle with this idea that alcohol is that toxic.
I get it.
I mean, you included this study from Singapore and Britain that rank alcohol as the most destructive drug overall.
Yes, that study ruffled a lot of feathers.
I bet. They ranked it above heroin, above crack cocaine. I mean, come on. If I do heroin, I could die immediately. If I have a beer, I'm fine. How do they justify that?
They justify it by looking at the blast radius of the drug. Heroin destroys the user. Alcohol destroys the user, their family, the people on the road with them, and the whole economy. But even if we put the societal stuff aside and just look at the biology, alcohol is much, much dirtier than people realize.
Explain that. What happens when I drink?
Well, we tend to focus on the liver, right? But the real villain here is a chemical called acetaldehyde.
Acetaldehyde.
Acetaldehyde. When your body breaks down alcohol, it converts it into this stuff.
Okay. And what does that do to me?
Imagine your DNA is a pristine instruction manual inside every single cell. It tells the cell how to repair itself, how to divide, how to not turn into cancer. Acetaldehyde is like like a toddler with a black marker running through that instruction manual, ripping out pages and scribbling over the text.
So it's not just toxic in some vague way.
Yeah.
It literally breaks our genetic code.
It breaks the code, it damages the DNA, and it prevents the body from repairing that damage. This is why the CDC explicitly notes that all alcoholic drinks, beer, wine, liquor, all of them carry a cancer risk.
I feel like if you stopped 100 people on the street, 99 of them would say heavy drinking causes liver cancer. But you're saying it's much broader than that.
So much broader. Alcohol is linked to 6 distinct types of cancer: mouth, throat, voice box, esophagus, colon and rectum, and breast cancer in women.
Breast cancer. See, that is the one that just floors me. I don't think I've ever seen a pink ribbon campaign that mentions cutting back on wine.
You haven't, and that is a massive failure of public health messaging. The risk increases with the amount you drink, but the mechanism for DNA damage is there regardless.
And what does this do to life expectancy? We started the show celebrating that Americans are living to 79.
That's the average. But for those who die from excessive drinking, the data shows their lives are shortened by an average of 26 years.
26
years.
That's not just dying a little early. That is missing an entire act of your life. Seeing your kids grow up, retirement, grandparenthood, it's just gone. Which leads us to the dollars and cents. Because even if you don't care about the human tragedy, the economic bill for this is just staggering. We have this massive report from Avalar Health.
Right. They estimated the national cost of opioid use disorder at approximately $4 trillion in 2024.
$4 trillion.
Yeah.
That is a number so big it doesn't even sound real. That's the GDP of a major country.
It is. And that includes lost productivity, healthcare costs, criminal justice expenses. It's a massive drain on the economy. But here is the critical synthesis we need to make.
Okay.
That $4 trillion is attached to opioids. But remember, alcohol use disorder is the most prevalent non-tobacco substance use disorder in the country.
So if opioids, which are less prevalent, cost $4 trillion.
Exactly. The logic follows that the economic drain from alcohol through lost productivity, treating those cancers we talked about, the car crashes, it's likely of a similar, if not greater magnitude. We just don't tally it up on the nightly news because it's woven into the fabric of our economy.
We treat the opioid cost as a catastrophe and the alcohol cost as just the cost of doing business.
Right. It's an invisible tax we are all paying.
And the disparity in how we try to fix it is even crazier. I was reading your notes on the medical advancements for opioids. You mentioned immunopharmacotherapy.
Yeah, try saying that 3 times fast.
I won't. But it's essentially a vaccine for opioids.
Basically, it's incredible science. It generates antibodies that bind to the opioid in your bloodstream and stop it from crossing the blood-brain barrier. So even if you use the drug, you don't get high. You don't overdose.
We are throwing the absolute cutting edge of biotechnology at this problem.
We are.
Okay. Now, compare that to the moonshot for alcohol. What are we doing there?
For alcohol, we're barely doing the basics. In 2022, only 7.6% of people with a past year alcohol use disorder received any treatment at all.
7.6%.
Less than 1 in 10. Imagine if only 7% of diabetics received insulin. It would be a national scandal.
So why is it so low? Is it because the treatments don't exist?
No, they exist. We have medications like naltrexone that block the euphoric effects of alcohol and reduce cravings. They are cheap, they are effective, they are FDA approved.
So why aren't people taking them? What's the uptake rate?
The uptake is minuscule, only 2.1%.
2.1%. That is baffling. If there is a pill that helps you stop drinking, why aren't doctors prescribing it?
It's a systemic failure. First, a lot of primary care providers, they just lack confidence or knowledge in prescribing them. They see addiction as a specialist problem. But the bigger barrier is the patients themselves. Get this. 95% of adults with symptoms of alcohol use disorder don't feel they need treatment.
95%.
Yes, and that goes right back to what we said at the start. Social acceptability.
Right. If you're drinking a bottle of wine a night, but you still go to work and your friends are doing the same thing, you don't look in the mirror and see a patient.
Exactly. You don't see yourself as sick. The stigma of the word alcoholic is so strong that people won't seek help until the damage is irreversible.
And I'm assuming access is an issue, too. We talked about rural areas earlier.
It's a huge issue. The KFF report highlights a severe shortage of behavioral health professionals in rural America. So even if you break through the denial and decide you want help, there might not be a specialist within 100 miles of you.
So you have the highest death rates in the places with the fewest doctors.
A fatal mismatch.
Okay, let's try to pull this all together. It's a complex picture. On one hand, we have this genuine victory with opioids. Deaths are down, life expectancy is up. The system, it it worked.
It did. We fought a war, and we are winning.
But on the other hand, we have this silent crisis that is arguably larger in scope. Alcohol kills more people by the broad definition. It's hitting women and young people harder than ever before. It's costing us trillions.
And yet, because it's legal and culturally beloved, we are essentially shrugging our shoulders. We're congratulating ourselves for putting out a grease fire on the stove while the foundation of the house is rotting away.
That is a terrifying image.
It is. But recognizing that contradiction is the only way to fix it. The disconnect between how lethal this substance is and how we respond to it, that is the defining public health contradiction of our time.
So what does this mean for you, listening? It means looking past the headlines. It means understanding that legal does not mean safe. And it means realizing that the face of this crisis isn't a stereotype. It looks a lot like our friends, our neighbors, and maybe even ourselves.
And it raises a critical question. If we can mobilize the entire machinery of the U.S. government to fight opioids, why are we paralyzed when it comes to the drink in our hand?
So I want to leave you with a thought to mull over today. We talked about that $4 trillion cost of opioids, a number so big we treat it as a catastrophe that needs immediate intervention. If we applied that same economic lens to alcohol, a substance that is statistically more prevalent and kills more people every year, how can we possibly justify our business as usual approach? Does the legality of a substance, the fact that you can buy it on any corner, really blind us to its lethality?
That is the question we need to answer.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.